This rescued K9 German Shepherd puppy acts just like a human. Try not to laugh at his hilarious tricks. They found him under a wrecked patrol car, soaked in rain, his paws trembling, barely old enough to stand. No mother, no ID tag. Just one look in his eyes was enough to know this wasn't just any puppy. From the moment he was brought into the K9 Rehabilitation Center, something became very clear. He acted nothing like a dog, from mimicking handshakes to copying push-ups, to climbing chairs like a toddler, and even trying to talk back when scolded. This little German Shepherd quickly became the most human-like puppy the officers had ever seen. But behind all the laughter and viral-worthy antics is a story that will touch your heart in ways you never expected. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of our most inspiring stories about loyalty, love, and unforgettable K9 heroes. It was supposed to be a routine sweep after the storm. Officer Daniel Brooks had been working late, assisting cleanup in the outskirts of Cedar Point, a small town tucked between rolling hills and riverbanks in North Carolina. The wind had knocked over a dozen power poles. A few vehicles were overturned, and the rain had left the training yard at the police K9 compound soaked with mud and debris. As Daniel navigated the grounds behind the decommissioned patrol garage, his flashlight caught a glimmer beneath the twisted wreckage of an old cruiser. He stepped closer, unsure at first if it was a piece of metal or a living thing. Then it moved. A small, soaking wet German Shepherd puppy, barely the size of a backpack, was curled up tightly beneath the broken frame, shivering so violently it looked like he was vibrating. His ears were folded, and his paws were raw from scraping against the ground. Daniel crouched. "Hey there, buddy, hey, easy." The puppy didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just looked up, tilted his head slightly, and blinked slowly, as if trying to understand what Daniel was. Not with fear, but curiosity. Daniel extended his hand, half expecting the pup to bolt, but the dog didn't flinch. He reached forward, and in the most bizarre gesture Daniel had ever seen from a stray, the puppy placed one paw into Daniel's hand, almost like a handshake. It was enough to make the officer pause. "Well, aren't you something?" With care, Daniel wrapped the pup in his jacket, cradling him against his chest as he returned to the main building. The little one didn't whine or struggle. He just looked around like he was already taking mental notes of every room. At the shelter clinic inside the compound, Vet Tech Amanda Collins gasped when Daniel stepped in. "Where'd you get him?" "Under the old garage. No tags, no chip, no sign of a mother. And get this," he shook my hand. Amanda raised an eyebrow, assuming he was joking. But the moment she reached to check the puppy's ears, the little shepherd mimicked the motion again, lifting his paw upward, gently pressing it against her wrist. Amanda stared. "Did he just—" "Yup," Daniel said, "like he's done it before." They gave the puppy a warm bath, dried his fur, now revealing a soft, sandy coat with darker black stripes along his back, and applied ointment to his pads. No injuries beyond dehydration and exhaustion. He didn't bark once. But every time someone entered the room, he'd follow their eyes, mimic their tilt, and often sit down when they did, like he was studying human behavior and reflecting it back. Amanda chuckled. "He's watching us like we're the ones being evaluated." Daniel leaned closer. "That's because he is." They kept him under observation for the night. He ate carefully, drank slowly, and before bed, surprised everyone again by pulling a small towel into the corner of his pen and arranging it into a neat spiral, lying down like a child curling into a blanket. By morning, he'd already become the center of attention. The Cedar Point K9 facility was part of a larger program run by the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, training German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois for narcotics detection, search and rescue, and officer protection. The dogs were bred and trained from the earliest age, but this puppy, whoever he was, didn't come from any known litter in the registry. They gave him a name, Buddy, because no matter who walked by, from senior handlers to part-time janitors, he acted like, well, their buddy. He'd paw at the fence to get attention, copy their gestures, and even try to mimic noises. One time letting out a strange half yawn, half sigh when a trainer groaned in frustration about spilled coffee. By the third day, they noticed something even more unusual. He was trying to sit in chairs. It began in the conference room. One of the handlers left the door open, and Buddy wandered in. When they returned, they found him struggling, comically, to climb into a rolling office chair. He'd paw at the cushion, back up, try again, then finally launched himself an awkward hop and settle, front paws on the desk, looking around like a tiny detective. Daniel caught the moment on video. When they reviewed the footage, everyone burst out laughing. "He thinks he's people," Amanda said. But the moment Buddy heard the laughter, he turned and wagged his tail. Proud. He liked being funny. That night, the video was uploaded to the precinct's private group chat. The next morning, it had gone viral. Someone had shared it on a local pet rescue page. Then it was picked up by a regional K9 support group. Then it hit Twitter. Within 24 hours, the puppy that thinks he's human had over 1 million views. People couldn't get enough of Buddy's facial expressions, his exaggerated head tilts, and his habit of clapping his paws together, especially when mimicking someone clapping after a command. He wasn't just smart. He was ridiculously expressive. But beneath the laughter, something deeper began to form between Buddy and Daniel. The officer, 36, had spent most of his adult life in law enforcement. Divorced. No kids. He'd buried his last partner, AK-9 named Rex, 2 years earlier after a tragic fentanyl bus went wrong. Since then, Daniel had refused to work with dogs again. Too much loss. Too much pain. But Buddy was different. One night, Daniel sat in the training yard alone, thinking, watching the stars over the fencing. Buddy wandered out, crawled up beside him on the bench, and leaned against his side. Not sat near him, not lay at his feet, but pressed in like a child seeking comfort after a long day. Daniel stared at the pup, startled. "You always know when someone's sad, huh?" Buddy licked his hand, then laid his chin on Daniel's lap. That was the moment it happened. Daniel realized he wasn't just caring for Buddy. Buddy was caring for him. This wasn't a rescue story with one side saving the other. They were saving each other, slowly, moment by moment, in the quiet spaces between the laughs. But things were about to change, because one of the top officers in the K9 program had been watching Buddy's videos and had just issued an official request. They wanted Buddy tested, evaluated, to see if the funny little human dog was more than just a social media phenomenon, and whether he had what it took to become something more, a real working dog, a partner. But Daniel wasn't ready. Not yet, because if Buddy was selected, he wouldn't belong to him anymore. He'd be deployed, trained, and one day, maybe too soon, sent somewhere dangerous, just like Rex. And Daniel wasn't sure if he could go through that all over again. Not after everything. Not with this dog. But the order had already been signed. Buddy was going to be tested, and his future might never be the same. The K9 testing field at Cedar Point wasn't designed to be warm or inviting. It was a wide-open space of gravel and dust, enclosed by barbed wire fencing, lined with scent tunnels, stair walls, agility ladders, and distractions ranging from air horns to fake gunfire. It was a place where puppies became officers, where instinct met discipline, and where the real evaluations began. Buddy had never been there before. Daniel stood at the observation platform, arms folded across his chest, watching as a small shepherd pup, barely 4 months old, was led into the field by one of the senior handlers, Sergeant Lee Wallace. Her reputation was legendary in the K9 program. She'd trained over 50 working dogs in her career. Most feared her, but she never smiled unless something impressed her. And right now, she was not smiling. "Let's see if the little comedian knows anything beyond TikTok tricks," she muttered, barely loud enough for Daniel to hear. Daniel said nothing. He didn't want Buddy tested. He didn't want him measured or judged or forced into something he wasn't ready for. Not yet. Not when they were just starting to heal together. But orders were orders. And Buddy trotted onto the course with his usual goofy enthusiasm, ears bouncing, tail wagging like a happy flag. The first task, sent location. A piece of target cloth was hidden inside one of 10 black tubes. Buddy sniffed once, then immediately turned left, bypassed the first 5 tubes, and stopped at the 6th. He sat down. Correct. Lee blinked. Beginner's luck, she said, but scribbled a note. Next, obstacle climb. The wall was nearly twice the size. Other pups his age usually hesitated. Buddy tilted his head, studied the wood plank, then backed up and ran at it. He didn't climb in one try, but he didn't stop either. He tried again and again, each time adjusting his paws, watching where he failed, recalculating. On the 5th attempt, he scaled the wall and landed with a clumsy bounce on the other side, turning toward the observers with a proud bark, like a child yelling, "Look, Mom." The handlers clapped. Lee didn't, but Daniel could see it, the flicker in her eyes. She was impressed. Then came the sound test. Blanks were fired from 2 corners of the yard. Most dogs flinched or retreated slightly, even trained ones. Buddy? He looked toward the sound, tilted his head, and barked back, a sharp, playful yap-yap as if challenging the noise itself. Then he sat, tongue lolling out, and waited. Lee looked up at Daniel for the first time. "What did you do to him?" "I just listened to him," Daniel said quietly. "Let him be who he is." The test ended with the puppy returning to Lee's feet. She crouched beside him, eyes narrowing. "You're not just a funny pup, are you?" she murmured. "There's something in that brain of yours." Buddy raised his paw and gently tapped her shoulder. Like a thank you, Lee stared. Then, for the first time in years, she laughed. Later that afternoon, in the main office, Daniel sat across from her. "Let me guess," he said. He passed. "With flags flying," she replied. "That dog's a thinker, a mimic, but also obedient. He reads people like a second language." Daniel remained still. "So what happens now?" "He's being recommended for the early development program. Special designation." Daniel frowned. Which means he'll be transferred in 3 weeks to Fort Henley. They'll raise him, train him, and assign him to either a narcotics task force or tactical response. Maybe even federal. Daniel's throat tightened. Just like that. This is what the program is. Brooks. These dogs don't belong to anyone. They serve. That's their purpose. Daniel stared out the window. He could see Buddy in the yard, play with a rope toy, completely unaware his fate was already sealed. Lee's voice softened just a little. "He likes you. That's clear. But don't confuse attachment with ownership. You know how it works." Daniel didn't answer, because he did know, but this time it felt wrong. Buddy wasn't just another prospect. He wasn't bred for this life. He hadn't been ordered, tracked, or delivered in a government crate. He was found, chosen by chance. And more than that, he brought something no protocol could measure. Joy, connection, healing. Daniel rose from his chair. "Thank you for the report. You know he'll make a difference out there, right?" she added. Daniel paused at the door. "He already has." That evening, Daniel took Buddy for a walk beyond the yard, past the training zones, into the quiet trail by the woods. Buddy trotted beside him, occasionally jumping at butterflies or carrying a leaf in his mouth, like it was treasure. They sat beneath an old oak tree. The sun was setting, and Daniel felt a tightness in his chest he hadn't felt since the day Rex was buried. Buddy lay beside him, chin resting on Daniel's boot. 3 weeks, Daniel said aloud. Buddy looked up. "I know it's what they think is best. Maybe it is best, but I don't know if I can let you go, Bud." Buddy placed a paw on Daniel's knee. Just one touch. That simple. And Daniel broke. He ran a hand through his hair, blinked hard against the sting in his eyes. "You're not just a dog. I know it sounds stupid, but I think you were sent for me, not the other way around." Buddy leaned in, resting his whole head on Daniel's thigh. No bark, no whine, just stillness, understanding. And Daniel realized something he hadn't admitted to anyone, not even himself. He didn't just love Buddy. He needed him. But the decision wasn't his to make, unless he broke the rules. Unless he found a way to fight back, not just with sentiment, but with proof that Buddy's place wasn't in combat, but somewhere more important, somewhere that mattered just as much. Daniel got up that night and began writing, not just emails, an appeal to the department, to the K-9 board, to the mayor, even to a nonprofit therapy dog foundation. He gathered every video, every note, every medical chart. He built a case not based on what Buddy could do on paper, but what he could do for people. He even attached a photo, Buddy sitting on a park bench, one paw on a child's lap, comforting her after a minor bike accident. No training, no command, just instinct, empathy, real, honest empathy. Daniel wrote until 2 a.m., then hit send. All he could do now was wait. 2 days passed, then 4. No response. Lee told him nothing had changed. Transfer was still scheduled. Daniel felt the walls closing in. Then, on the 5th morning, as he stepped into the office, there it was, an envelope, no stamp, just the word approved on the front. Inside was a single page. In light of evidence provided and the unique temperament and developmental profile of Buddy, the request for reassignment to emotional service tier has been granted. Buddy will remain in Cedar Point K-9 Division under Officer Daniel Brooks. Assigned role, community support and therapeutic outreach dog. Daniel couldn't believe it. He read it twice, 3 times. Then he actually ran, to the yard. Buddy was rolling in the grass, tongue flopping, ears half-cocked. Daniel dropped to his knees, opened his arms wide. Buddy bounded in. And for the first time since Rex, Daniel laughed without guilt. He had fought. He had won. And Buddy was home. The new vest arrived a week later. Black nylon, soft line, with bright white letters embroidered across both sides. Community support, Buddy. Daniel crouched down in front of the pup, who was already trying to bite the strap in excitement. Hey, leave it, he said, laughing. This is your uniform now. You ready to go to work? Buddy wagged his tail so hard his back legs lifted. The first day on duty wasn't a patrol car. It wasn't a search drill or a training center. It was a visit to Cedar Point Elementary School. Daniel had been invited to speak at a classroom of 3rd graders after one of the students, Liam Turner, had written an essay titled, "Why Buddy the Dog Should Be Our Mayor." It had gone viral locally, and the school thought it was only fair to meet the K-9 politician in person. As soon as Buddy entered the classroom, the room exploded with squeals of joy. Buddy! He's wearing a vest. He looks like a baby cop. Daniel tried to give a proper presentation, but Buddy stole the show. He walked from desk to desk, placing a paw on each kid's knee or shoulder. He licked away tears from one child who had anxiety about speaking aloud. He climbed again into an empty chair beside the teacher's desk and sat like a mini principal. The staff couldn't stop smiling. By the time they left, 3 teachers had requested Buddy for their own classrooms, and the school counselor asked if he could visit regularly to help students with learning difficulties and trauma. But it didn't stop there. Word spread. Within a month, Buddy was attending community events, greeting elderly residents at local care homes, and even helping calm witnesses during courtroom testimony. He didn't bark commands or chase suspects. His work was quieter, but no less vital. One afternoon, after an emotionally taxing case involving a domestic violence survivor who refused to speak to anyone, Daniel brought Buddy into the interview room. The woman had her head down. Buddy sat beside her for 10 full minutes in silence. Then, without prompting, he placed both front paws on her lap and leaned his weight against her. The woman broke down, and for the first time, she talked. Afterward, the detective who watched from behind the glass said, "That dog's doing things no badge ever could." Daniel couldn't have agreed more. He saw it every day, the way people melted around Buddy. Not just kids or seniors, but hard men, too. Cops with trauma, veterans with nightmares. They softened. They opened up. Buddy didn't follow protocol. He followed hearts. And Daniel, he wasn't just his handler anymore. He was his partner. But as peaceful as the present seemed, not everyone was happy with Buddy's new path. One cold morning, Daniel received an anonymous letter slipped into his mailbox. No name, just 6 typed words on a plain white card. He's still government property. Not yours. Daniel's blood ran cold. Buddy's past and future might not be done with him yet. Daniel read the message again. He's still government property, not yours. It wasn't a threat, not in the traditional sense, but it landed with the weight of one. He turned the card over. No signature, no return address, just clean edges and silence. Whoever had sent it knew the weight of those words and exactly where to strike. By law, any animal who entered a federal K-9 training pipeline, even by accident, was considered government-issued. Reassigned, yes. Repurposed, sure, but still owned. Buddy's recent reassignment to community support was considered a special exception, but exceptions could be revoked. Daniel set the card down and looked across the living room. Buddy was on his back, one paw in the air, snoring softly with his tongue sticking out, completely unaware, innocent, pure, and Daniel felt something primal rise in him. They weren't taking him. Not now. Not after everything they'd been through. The next day, Daniel went straight to the director's office at the Cedar Point K-9 Division. Chief Reynolds was ex-military, thick-shouldered, with a buzz cut and no patience for emotional outbursts, as he often called them. "I need to know if anyone's trying to reverse Buddy's reassignment," Daniel asked, standing stiffly across from his desk. Reynolds looked up. "Where's this coming from?" "I received a message. Anonymous, saying he's still government property." Reynolds sighed. "Technically, he is." Daniel's jaw clenched. "So someone could still take him?" "Theoretically, yes. But the reassignment is logged and signed. You have a legal basis to keep him in your program, unless there's an override." "Is there an override?" Reynolds hesitated. "There's been talk," he said. "Buddy's popularity has gotten attention. Higher-ups are curious if he's being underutilized. They think he might be more valuable in a visibility campaign. National tours. Press work." Daniel stared. "You mean they want to turn him into a mascot?" "Not my call," Reynolds said. "But yes." Public relations at the federal level reached out. Daniel stepped forward. "He's not a mascot. He's not a tool. He's a living being who's helping people, kids, survivors, our own officers." Reynolds held up a hand. "I agree, but this is above me now. If they issue an order, there's nothing I can do." Daniel nodded slowly, then turned to leave, but before stepping out, he added, "Then I guess I'll have to find someone who can do something." Daniel went public, not recklessly, but intentionally. He reached out to the Therapy Dog nonprofit that had helped support Buddy's reassignment months earlier. He gave interviews to 2 local newspapers. Then he allowed a short documentary team from a regional news network to film a day in Buddy's life, including his visits to the Children's Hospital and his after-school reading program. The video went viral again. But this time it wasn't cute. It was powerful. People saw Buddy sitting beside a boy with autism, helping him read aloud for the first time. They saw him calm a war veteran during a PTSD flare-up. They saw Buddy's eyes, warm, alive, present. He wasn't performing. He was connecting. Within a week, the department was flooded with letters, emails, phone calls from teachers, parents, nurses, even former police officers. One message stood out. It came from a retired federal judge. "In 35 years on the bench, I've never seen a courtroom calm the way it did when Buddy walked in. That dog doesn't just help. He heals. Take him from Cedar Point, and you'll lose more than a dog. You'll lose trust." Daniel printed the message and taped it to Reynolds' door. But the real turning point came unexpectedly. A young mother named Rebecca Morales showed up at the precinct with her 6-year-old daughter, Ellie. Ellie had been the victim of a traumatic car accident a year prior. Since then, she hadn't spoken a single word. Therapy hadn't helped. Doctors feared long-term mutism until Buddy visited her school. According to Rebecca, Ellie had smiled for the first time in months when Buddy placed his paw on her sketchbook. That night, she whispered one word to her mother, "Doggy." Daniel remembered the visit. Buddy had curled beside Ellie for nearly half an hour, unmoving, eyes half closed, as if he knew silence was what she needed most. Rebecca brought Ellie to see Buddy again. This time, when they entered the room, Ellie ran to him and hugged his neck. Then she spoke clearly. "I missed you." Everyone in the room froze. Tears welled in Rebecca's eyes. She turned to Daniel, speechless. Buddy wagged his tail and licked Ellie's hand. Daniel looked toward the glass window of the viewing room and saw Chief Reynolds watching silently. The final hearing was short. 3 officials from the Public Relations Bureau arrived, suits pressed and expressions unreadable. They sat across from Daniel, Chief Reynolds, and a legal advisor from the Community Outreach Program. Daniel presented his case. Calmly, firmly, he showed the footage, shared the testimonies, even presented Ellie's handwritten drawing. A picture of her and Buddy holding hands under a big blue sky. Then the lead official asked a single question. "Why do you believe this dog is different?" Daniel didn't hesitate. Because Buddy wasn't born into the system. He chose to help. Every single time. Without training. Without command. And that choice, that's what makes him more than a program asset. That's what makes him human. Silence. Then the official spoke quietly. "The reassignment will stand. The campaign will find another face." Daniel exhaled. Relief didn't come like a wave. It came like breath. Steady. Earned. Buddy was safe. That night, Daniel and Buddy sat once again beneath the oak tree. The wind was soft. The stars bright. Daniel looked down at the pup curl beside him, tail flicking occasionally in a dream. "You changed everything, didn't you?" he murmured. Buddy shifted, one ear twitching. "You weren't just saving me. You were saving this whole place, reminding us what this job really means." Buddy rolled onto his side, belly exposed. Daniel laughed and rubbed his fur. "No more suits. No more hearings. Just you and whatever you decide to do next." Buddy opened one eye, and for a moment, just a second, Daniel swore he saw it again. That spark, the one that said, "I understand you," not as a dog, but as something more. Something that didn't need a badge or a title, just a heart. The morning began like any other. Daniel tossed Buddy his breakfast kibble, and the shepherd caught it midair with his usual dramatic flair, spinning once before landing in a proud sit like performer who knew exactly how good he was. "You're impossible," Daniel laughed. Buddy tilted his head, tail thumping wildly. They were scheduled for a light day, a visit to the library's reading corner, a quick stop at the precinct, and then a meet and greet at a senior care facility just outside of town. It was the kind of day Buddy loved, full of new smells, smiling faces, and lots of attention. But by noon, everything changed. It started with a crackling voice over the radio as Daniel pulled into the community center parking lot. "Unit 3, we've got a 10 to 66 in progress. Possible child in danger. Reported at 145 Glenmont Street. Witnesses say a man forced entry and a girl may be inside." Daniel froze, hand gripping the wheel. That address was barely 4 blocks away. He looked at Buddy, now sitting in the passenger seat with ears raised, body stiff. Daniel switched frequencies. "This is Officer Brooks. I'm at Lincoln and Jasper. I can respond immediately." "Copy, Unit 3. Back up en route. Proceed with caution." Daniel didn't hesitate. He flicked on the lights and siren. Buddy's posture changed instantly. Alert, focused, no wag in sight. It wasn't playtime anymore. It was instinct. When they arrived at the house, a small one-story cottage with an overgrown lawn and a broken porch step, Daniel noticed immediately that the front door was ajar. Neighbors were gathered at the edge of the property, murmuring. He stepped out, hand on his holster, and looked at Buddy. "Stay," he said, voice firm. Buddy didn't move. He knew the tone. Daniel approached carefully, announced himself. "Police? Anyone inside? I'm armed." No answer. Then a sound from the back of the house. A thump, then a girl's cry. Daniel's instincts took over. He drew his weapon and entered low, clearing corners quickly. The living room was empty. Kitchen, too. Then he saw it. The hallway door was partially shut, light spilling underneath. He approached slowly, then burst through. What he saw froze his blood. A man in a tattered denim jacket stood beside the bed, one hand gripping the wrist of a girl no older than 8, who was trying to pull away, crying. She had a bloody scrape across her cheek. The man turned, wild eyes, sweating, and reached behind his back. Daniel shouted, "Police? Let her go now." The man didn't. He lunged. There was no time to think. Suddenly, from behind, a blur of fur and muscle shot past Daniel's legs. Buddy, he'd slipped out. He hadn't stayed in the car. In one motion, Buddy leapt, hitting the man square in the chest, teeth gripping the jacket, pulling him backward and off balance. The man crashed to the floor. Daniel secured the girl, kicked the weapon, a switchblade, out of the suspect's hand, and cuffed it before he could move. Buddy backed up but didn't bark, didn't snap. He stood over the child detectively, tail low, eyes locked on the man, as if daring him to try again. It was over in under a minute, but it changed everything. Later that evening, after the suspect was booked and the girl was safe with her family, Daniel sat on the steps outside the precinct, Buddy beside him. "You broke every rule today," Daniel muttered. Buddy stared ahead, unbothered. "You were supposed to stay in the car." Buddy slowly turned, leaned against Daniel's arm. "But you knew, didn't you?" Daniel said. Buddy just exhaled through his nose, soft and satisfied. "You felt it before I did." Daniel reached down and scratched behind his ears. "You're more than a support dog, aren't you? You're still a shepherd, still wired to protect." Buddy licked his wrist once, then leaned his head into Daniel's chest. News spread fast. By morning, body cam footage and witness accounts had been compiled, and once again, Buddy was a name on everyone's lips. But this time, it wasn't about his tricks. It was about his bravery. Local headlines read, "Therapy dog stops assault during active crime scene. K9 hero defies protocol. Saves child." The footage, especially the moment Buddy threw himself between the man and the girl, went viral within hours. But the department had a problem. While Buddy's actions had prevented a tragedy, technically, he had disobeyed a direct command. Daniel had told him to stay. That afternoon, Daniel was called into a review hearing. Chief Reynolds sat at the head of the table. "We're not here to question what happened," Reynolds began. "What Buddy did was extraordinary, but there are protocols." Daniel stayed quiet. The internal affairs officer continued. "We have to decide if Buddy can remain in his current capacity or if he should be reevaluated for formal tactical duty." There it was. Again, the same fight, dressed differently. Daniel leaned forward. "With respect, sir, this dog doesn't need a title to do what's right. He didn't act out of aggression. He didn't disobey recklessly. He knew, he sensed the danger, and he acted to protect a child." He paused. "And if you think a training program can teach that, you're wrong. That's not training. That's hard." Silence. Reynolds studied him, then leaned back. "This is what we're going to do," he said. 2 days later, Daniel received the notice. Buddy's designation would remain unchanged, but with a note added to his file. This animal's instinct to protect may override non-essential command structures in high-stress situations. This is not a flaw, it's a feature. Buddy wasn't just a support dog. He was now a certified guardian companion, the first of his kind in the state, a category created just for him. That night, Daniel opened his front door to a quiet surprise. The little girl from the rescue, Ella, stood on his porch, holding her mother's hand, a stuffed animal in her arms. She stepped forward, shy, then knelt and handed the plush to Buddy. "It's for you," she whispered. Buddy sniffed it once, then sat proudly, placing a paw on her hand. She beamed, and Daniel, watching it unfold, the silent exchange between trauma and healing, knew something with certainty. Whatever title they gave him, Buddy already knew exactly who he was. It happened in an instant. 1 minute. Buddy was bounding across the park lawn, racing toward a group of laughing children during a community picnic. The next, a cry rang out. A squirrel darted between his legs. Buddy twisted to avoid it mid-sprint and slipped on the slick grass. His back leg twisted unnaturally, and he let out a short, sharp yelp before collapsing on his side. The park fell silent. Daniel dropped his plate and sprinted toward him. "Buddy!" The shepherd was trying to get up, his front paws clawing at the earth, but his back leg dragged behind him. Limp, Daniel knelt, hands trembling. "Hey! Hey, it's okay, I've got you. Buddy didn't resist. He rested his head on Daniel's forearm, eyes wide, ears pulled back. The pain was visible. But more than that, confusion. He didn't understand why his body had failed. Within minutes, they were racing to the emergency vet. X-rays confirmed it. A torn cruciate ligament. The vet explained it gently, but Daniel already knew what it meant. Surgery. Recovery. Weeks of restricted movement. Possibly months before Buddy could run again, if ever. That night, Daniel sat beside Buddy's bed, the once bouncy dog now groggy and wrapped in soft bandages. He didn't lick Daniel's hand. He didn't try to sit up. He just stared ahead. Still and silent, Daniel whispered, "You're still you know that?" No reaction. Something inside Daniel broke. Buddy, the one who had saved others, who had brought smiles, stopped danger, comforted the broken, now lay still, unsure of who he was without movement, without the ability to chase, jump, or lean his body into someone needing love. But Daniel had learned from him, so he stayed, through every vet visit, every hour of therapy, every time Buddy whined in frustration because he couldn't play, or when his back legs refused to follow his brain's command. He stayed, and slowly, Buddy came back, not with leaps or tricks, but in new ways. He began nudging open doors with his nose again. He began sleeping on his back, the ultimate sign of trust, with his legs awkwardly in the air. He started resting his chin on Daniel's feet again, inch by inch, letting himself believe he was still useful, still loved, still Buddy. Months passed. Buddy didn't return to full speed, but his presence grew deeper. He began visiting hospice care centers, where calm was more important than motion, where stillness became a strength. He learned to sit beside beds and rest his head on the hands of those who had little left to hold. He'd breathe in rhythm with them, as if syncing his heartbeat to theirs. No one taught him that. He just knew. And Daniel, watching all this unfold, understood something profound. Buddy wasn't changing because he had to. He was adapting because he wanted to. He had lost his jump, but not his purpose. On the 1-year anniversary of Buddy's reassignment, Cedar Point hosted a ceremony. Community members gathered. Children wore handmade shirts with paw prints. Seniors held signs that read, "Thank you, Buddy." The mayor spoke. Then Daniel was invited to say a few words. He stepped up to the microphone, Buddy sitting crookedly at his feet, wearing his vest. Daniel looked out at the crowd. I could stand here and talk about what Buddy's done, the lives he's touched, the people he's helped, but that would take hours. Instead, I'll say this. This dog was never meant to be anyone's hero. He was just a puppy found under a wrecked car. He didn't come from elite bloodlines. He didn't pass all the tests perfectly, but he chose to help. Every time, even when it hurt, even when it meant falling down. He taught me that being strong isn't about what you can do at full speed. It's about what you do when you can't move at all. The crowd was silent. Then someone began to clap. And soon, the park was filled with applause, not for a perfect dog, but for a perfectly loyal one. Buddy lifted his head. Then, in classic Buddy fashion, he raised his paw and waved. The crowd laughed and cried, because somehow, in that one little movement, he reminded them all he was still human in all the best ways. That night, Daniel sat on the porch as the sun set. Buddy rested beside him. Older now, slower, but wiser. Daniel whispered, "We made it, didn't we?" Buddy thumped his tail. "I thought I rescued you. Turns out, you rescued all of us." Buddy nudged his head into Daniel's chest. And in that moment, beneath the stars, in the quiet of a life well lived, Daniel felt peace. Not because things had been perfect, but because in every imperfect moment, they had shown up for each other. Again and again. That's what made it beautiful. That's what made it real. If this story inspired you, remember, the strongest hearts aren't always the fastest. Sometimes the ones who fall are the ones who teach us how to rise. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this story with someone who believes in second chances, loyal dogs, and the healing power of love.